Welcome back. I'm so happy today to be talking about neurofeedback with one of our experts, Dr. Gattis, who's at our Costa Mesa clinic. And this is a topic that we don't spend enough time talking about because we actually recommend it to a lot of people. So I'm really happy that you're here explaining what it is. Yeah, what we're doing.
Okay, neurofeedback is so fantastically exciting. Because what I love about neurofeedback is that we can address focal abnormalities in the brain. So, with our nutraceuticals and our medications, we can support the brain in its general function. We can help move it one way or another in its function and its self-regulation. But for instance, when people have an injury, a TBI or a concussion, right, and they have a slow focus, which I see all the time on my QEEG brain maps, right over here. Well, there's no particular medication that's going to improve the function just right here.
So when you say a slow focus, you're talking about sort of almost like just a little targeted spot.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. There's a decrease in the blood flow to this region right here because it was bruised. It's healed a little bit, but it's not fully recovered.
Right.
Right.
So these really smart guys, I have to make sure that we're...
Right. I know. I totally am guilty of talking in jargon.
That's okay.
So thank you for catching me. So we have a little decrease in blood flow. And so what we can do is we put the sensor on with neurofeedback, which picks up the electrical activity in the brain. And we feed that into the computer. And what happens is I'm creating a brain-computer interface.
Right.
Which is actually used to help people, for instance, who can no longer speak to communicate.
Oh, interesting.
It's the same technology, right? So they can use their brainwaves to select letters, to
fascinating.
Create words and sentences to communicate because it's called locked in, right? They literally have lost all control of their body. And so they can use their electrical activity to select words, but we can do the same thing with, for instance, watching a movie. So you're watching a movie and it gets dark when that lack of blood flow happens. And the movie gets bright when your brain increases the blood flow to that region. And so we encourage the brain, like a gentle exercise. And this is one of my main metaphors for neurofeedback. It's really like going to the gym for your brain.
Okay.
Well, maybe more like physical therapy, right? So it's because it's very targeted, particular exercises for your brain based on a map, correcting the abnormalities.
So I know when my daughter was really young, she had extreme anxiety. We thought she might have ADD. Turned out to not even be anything close to ADD. And now that she's older, it's obvious it's not ADD. She's the extreme other end.
Right.
She's very anxious and everything's got to be done ahead of time and perfect.
Right.
So she's not ADD at all.
Right.
But when she was little, it manifested. The anxiety was so intense that it would sort of shut her down.
Right.
And so we didn't know what was going wrong. And it was almost crippling. So it was recommended that she do some neurofeedback. In fact, Daniel wanted to do an EEG and do some neurofeedback with her. And it was helpful.
Right.
So I know anxiety is one of the reasons.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned TBI.
Right.
Who are other people that would benefit from neurofeedback?
One of the less well-known applications of neurofeedback was the original application of neurofeedback, which is epilepsy.
Interesting.
Yes, it was a coincidental discovery that it inhibited seizures when people trained a particular stabilizing rhythm on the top of the head.
Oh, interesting.
That it would decrease the number of seizures that epileptic had. And then what happened was they coincidentally discovered while training people for seizures that their depression got better and their anxiety got better and their attention got better. And then Joel Lubar and University of Tennessee started applying it to ADD children and found that it got their attention better and it began to spread in its application.
So interesting. So when I walked in and my daughter was doing neurofeedback, it looked like she was playing video games.
Right.
Explain to me.
Right. Well, that's the brain-computer interface. So we can use the brain-computer interface to control any particular kind of feedback. I mean, the earliest neurofeedback was just a little light would come on. That was it.
Okay.
If you achieved an alpha brainwave, a little light would go ping, and you would know you were making alpha. all right, of a particular amount. And it's only in this personal computer age that now we have really infinite options of what we want to use for feedback. Sometimes I train people with, a little number that's a representation of how much of a brainwave they have, and they're watching that number and looking for it to increase or decrease. And that's a very basic kind of neurofeedback where you can train with a tone or music or video, or they have 3D video games.
Right.
Some even with controllers where the kids can steer the car, but their brain's controlling how fast it goes.
Interesting.
Yeah, or a spaceship or whatever.
So fascinating. So it's really can seem almost fun to kids and not like they're doing something weird.
Right.
Not like there's something wrong with them.
Right.
It can actually seem interesting and fun.
Absolutely. I mean, thanks to the new kinds of feedback that we have, particularly watching videos. What kid doesn't like watching videos?
Exactly.
Right?
It's like a digital age,
we
right?
have very little difficulty getting them to come in and sit down for a session when they get to watch their favorite video.
Right. And so what kind of results do you get with?
Well, it's really quite amazing. So, we can target these particular abnormalities, and as they correct, they find that, I can concentrate where I used to fall asleep.
Okay.
Or approaching that task that used to seem so overwhelming. Well, now it doesn't seem so overwhelming. My brain is functioning the way it should. I'm calmer, or I'm more activated depending on what my brain needed, or more connected depending on what it needed. And things are better.
It's so interesting.
Yes.
It's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you work mostly with children or with adults, or who do you work with? A mixture?
Well, I would say I work mostly with adults here because I find that a lot of the kids who come are coming from so far away, and so we end up giving them referrals.
Right, okay.
Right, and locally it tends to be the adults who are coming in and doing the neurofeedback.
Very interesting. How many sessions does it take?
It's one of the hardest questions I deal with, Tana. I really have to look at the brain map, see how many things we're dealing with. I used to have a rule of thumb, but this is with the older traditional neurofeedback, which was 20 sessions per kind of major problem you want to address.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The new kind of neurofeedback we're doing is called Loretta, which is super exciting because we have to put on a full cap of 19 electrodes, but then what we can do with that cap is we can trace the actual source of the signal. So instead of, we used to put a single sensor on and pick up some surface activity. Well, the EEG travels in all directions from wherever it's coming from. So that's not as specific when you're telling the brain to change that. Then when you use the cap and you can tell it, no, I want you to change this particular activity in this little three-dimensional region over here, you're being much more specific of what you're asking the brain to do so it can learn much faster.
Oh, I like that.
Right. And so we get the same response that we used to take 20 sessions in like 5 sessions. Okay. So
it really depends
my rule of thumb is adjusting from 20, it's moving down. I'm not sure exactly where it is. Maybe it's 10.
Sort of depends on the person.
It depends on the person. And again, the more complex the case, generally the more sessions you're going to do.
Yeah, so what I love is that when people come here, it depends on what you have, what's going on with you. It's why I have so many experts on the show. Mm-hmm. We have experts in different, that deal with so many different things at our clinics. And I love that because we're really about skills, not just pills here. Mm-hmm. And so we want to be able to be sure that we can offer people a variety of different treatments depending on what they're going through. I love that we have hyperbaric oxygen, that we have EMDR therapy, that we have neurofeedback, that we have all these different modalities that are not just typical traditional Western medicine. We've got an integrative medicine doctor who tests for Lyme and hormones. And, so it's just such a unique place.
And I have to jump in and say I love being a part of that, Tana, because so often when treatment would fail in my private practice, it was because I didn't have access to all of these specialists with all these additional resources. And I would know, man, I really think there's something biological going on that I need to integrate a medical doctor for it, but I don't even know enough about that.
Well, and all of those things affect the
Yeah.
brain, and your brain can affect all those other things. Like when I had thyroid cancer and no one explained to me, oh, by the way, you might get a little depressed. Well, I didn't get a little depressed. I got really depressed. Yeah. No one told me.
Right.
So, and no one bothered like sending me to any expert. They just let me sort of suffer through it until I thought I was going to die or wanted to die. You know, it's like silly. So we really try to like look at the person holistically, and we make sure that we've got experts that are all here. It's like your body is not a bunch of individual organs. It's all connected. Yeah. And it all makes a difference. And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, our chances of success are so much higher when people have this comprehensive program.
Right.
You know, they're addressing nutrition. Right. You know, which is so important.
Huge.
You know, do they have systemic inflammation because they have an infection or because they're eating Taco Bell every day?
You'd be surprised how many people don't actually want to deal with that.
Right.
They're like, give me a pill. I don't want to know.
That's right. I don't want to know. I just want to know.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So, well, I thank you so much for joining me. Dr. Gattis is in our Costa Mesa office, and he does neurofeedback here. So contact us if you think you might benefit from this, or if you're not sure, we'll have someone in our call center reach out to you. You can leave me a message below. If you're going to leave contact information, please leave it in my private mailbox. Thank you so much.